Myst, Might, Mayhem. By Han Jung-Wioya. Chapter 58. Flags. Part 1. An odd, uncomfortable feeling that for some unknown reason, it seemed they shouldn't team up together. Because of that, the boy from the Vermilion Slaughter Valley, who had given up cooperating with Mok Jiang-un, whispered to the boy from the Esoteric Realm Gate next to him. "You're from the Esoteric Realm Gate, right?" "That's right. I'll get straight to the point. Let's not waste energy and do this gateway together." At the Vermilion Slaughter Valley boy's proposal, the Esoteric Realm Gate boy frowned as if considering it. It certainly wasn't a bad offer. Gathering with more capable people was a way to pass the gateway more easily. The Esoteric Realm Gate boy had seen the Vermilion Slaughter Valley boy earlier, hiding in the water and then pouncing on another boy to snatch the iron ball. It could be said to be a fairly excellent strategy. From that perspective, he could be helpful in this gateway, which required building a more strategic cooperative relationship than the iron ball struggle. However, do I really need to show even a bit of my skills to someone I might face in the next gateway? If they were together for 3 hours, he would end up revealing quite a lot. The less his faction's martial arts skills were revealed, the better. He judged that it would be more advantageous to avoid cooperating with the Vermilion Slaughter Valley and Demon Fire Hall boys, who were likely to survive until the end along with him. So the Esoteric Realm Gate boy said, "I refuse." "You'll regret it." "We'll see who regrets it." The Esoteric Realm Gate boy scoffed at his aggressive response. Then, as a last attempt, he tentatively asked the short-haired girl from the Demon Fire Hall. "Hey, Demon Fire Hall. What about you? Get lost." Rejection before he could even ask. The Esoteric Realm Gate boy closed his mouth with an irritated expression. Perhaps cooperating with them was impossible from the start. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Huff, huff. The boys looked at the mountain beyond the valley with tense faces. The moment the signal was given, a 3-hour period more physically demanding than the earlier iron ball struggle would begin. It was that moment when their eyes and ears were focused. Begin. As soon as the demon mask shout was heard, the boys rushed towards the valley water all at once. Just like before, even in this gateway, it was advantageous to secure a higher position by hurrying. Splash splash. The valley water was completely stained with blood due to the dead bodies. The scent of blood flowing from this valley water heralded another ordeal. A warrior watching them said to the demon mask, "They'll soon realize that the previous gateway was relatively easier." No gateway was easy. However, this gateway wasn't just about finding teammates that suited one's taste and defending the flag. It would be good to find the flags quickly. If they were perceptive, they would soon understand the meaning of the flags. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Once the warriors in red belts were out of sight, the boys took 3 types of actions. The first was those who ran towards the mountain without stopping. The flags. I need to find the flags. They were the type who believed they had to find the flags first. Because the number of flags was limited, they considered that a priority over finding teammates. Of course, this wasn't a wrong choice either. If they found teammates but couldn't secure a flag, it would be meaningless. Nearly half, about 200 of them, were of this type. This included the muscular boy from the Esoteric Realm Gate and the girl from the Demon Fire Hall, who were regarded as strong candidates to survive until the end. And the second type. "Hey, let's team up." "You mean together?" "Yeah. There's no point in securing a flag first like them. It's better to form a team in advance and seize the flags." "Huh? That way, it's easier to defend the flag too." In this way, the boys who stopped each found teammates that suited their taste or could be helpful. Since time was pressing, it was happening quickly. They also implicitly avoided fighting here, knowing that once the teams were formed and they entered deep into the mountain, the stamina depletion would be even more severe. Yeah. This is how it should be. The boy from the Vermilion Slaughter Valley snickered inwardly. With himself as the lead, he had succeeded in making those who entered from 5th to 15th place as his teammates. No, it would be more accurate to say that they had voluntarily joined his group from the beginning. Normally, if the top 11 joined together, there would be 8 members, but some of them ran without stopping to find the flags first, so the team was formed like this. This will do. It could be said to be the most dominant team. Since they had passed the iron ball struggle in the upper ranks, they were composed of individuals who possessed both skill and strategy. So if they could just secure a flag, all they had to do was focus on conserving their stamina as much as possible. Let's go. With that, the boy from the Vermilion Slaughter Valley, who had formed his team the fastest, headed towards the mountain. Other boys also quickly formed teams and moved. Among them was Mok Yucheon, but not that guy. Mok Yucheon shook his head, looking at Mok Jaeyoung in the distance. Even though they were half-brothers, they were still brothers, so he had considered joining forces with him. However, he absolutely didn't want to. His affection had fallen as far as it could after being immobilized helplessly during the journey here. Whether he lives or dies, it's not my business. No. For now, his priority was his own survival. Fortunately, the guys nearby offered to team up with Mok Yucheon, so he was able to join them. Although it was creepy since they weren't from the righteous faction, he had no choice but to survive. He had to grasp at straws. I will survive. No matter what. Persuading himself like that, Mok Yucheon also set off with his teammates. Meanwhile, what are you trying to do, mortal? Chang Ryong, who was in Mok Jaeyoung's bosom, asked. In response, Mok Jaeyoung quietly answered in a whisper, I thought I'd try to find teammates. Why are you doing such a useless thing? Just find a flag and they'll naturally flock to you. Mok Jaeyoung shrugged his shoulders. Of course, what she said was also true. It was still early, and in a situation where the location of the flags was unknown, if he just secured one first, they would naturally join him even without pre-forming a team like this. Are you trying to manage your stamina or something? Forming a team in advance was to reduce risk by joining forces and conserve stamina. It could be seen as preparing for the next gateway in advance. However, that's not it. What? If it's not that, why is he trying to form a team now? Chang Ryong couldn't help but find it strange. In the first place, she knew well that he wasn't the type to cooperate with others on anything. But here, Mok Jaeyoung encountered an unexpected problem. This is troublesome. Heh. Chang Ryong let out a scoff. That's because, unexpectedly, when Mok Jaeyoung approached the boys to form a team, they distanced themselves as if on guard. Some had seen Mok Jaeyoung's cruel hands when he passed first. So they seemed to be reluctant to form a team with Mok Jaeyoung. Although they whispered softly, he could hear their voices. It might be better to get rid of that guy now. Did you see? How he ripped out the throat to take out the swallowed iron ball. He's completely crazy. That aspect made them avoid Mok Jaeyoung. A considerable number found it burdensome to team up with Mok Jaeyoung, who had such a tendency, and thought it would be better to isolate him and eliminate him. Because of this judgment, they were in a hurry to avoid him when he approached. Seems like you made quite an unpleasant impression, mortal. I guess so. You just wasted time for nothing. As Chang Ryong said, if it was like this, it might be difficult to find teammates. He wanted to start a bit more comfortably, but should he change his approach? While he was thinking that, a boy with short hair timidly approached Mok Jaeyoung. Do you need a teammate? Yes. But we're 7 people. Want to join us? At the boy's suggestion, those around him whispered. Who the hell is trying to bring that guy in? If they had even a little bit of sense, it would be better to exclude that guy in advance since it would be annoying to compete with him later. That was swish. Because there was a girl waving her hand towards Mok Jaeyoung. She had exceptional beauty, and around her, 5 boys were accompanying her like bodyguards. It was a team formed with the sole girl at the center. A boy whispered softly. "Soa. Are you sure? That guy is a bit." "Yeah. Even the other guys aren't accepting him in the same team because they judged it's better to exclude him in advance." Another boy agreed. At this, the girl named Soa smiled and said, "Trust me. I trust you. But while other stupid guys think it's the answer to exclude him in advance, that's not it. Having that guy with us will be advantageous for us too." Soa had considered it but thought it would be beneficial to accept Mok Jae-un. Apart from his cruel hands, he was a guy with enough strength to rip out a throat with one hand even with his danjian sealed. If they had this guy with them, other teams wouldn't recklessly attack them. And we can just use him until dawn and then kill him. Do you think he can handle 7 people alone, no matter how strong he is? She had even planned to eliminate him after using him. Of course, if this happened, one person would be left out at the end. But for this, one person was supposed to keep a distance and follow behind in advance. If that bastard died, that empty spot would be filled. Stupid guys. A useful pawn is meant to be used and discarded like this. Make him fight to his heart's content on our behalf, conserving our stamina and killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She scorned both her teammates and the other guys. The brain is meant to be used. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Like that, within an hour, most had formed teams and entered the mountain. The team led by the soul girl named Soa was the same. From now on, it was a matter of quickly finding a flag and securing it. Otherwise, they would have to snatch a flag claimed by another team. While moving like that, Soa subtly approached Mok Jae-un. "You were quite impressive earlier." "Was I?" "I'm Soa." "What's your name?" "I'm Mok Jae-un." "Mok Jae-un?" Soa tilted her head. It was a name she had never heard before. His cruel hands and seemingly considerable skill made her curious about his background, but she couldn't tell from just his name. Among the martial families, there's only one place with the Mok surname on the righteous side. Yun Moksword Manor, the famous martial family of Anhui province. But there was no way someone from that righteous Mok family would be here. Then the only way was to ask directly. "Where are you from? Does that matter? Does he mean he has no intention of telling me?" Well, even if they had a cooperative relationship now, they would have to compete again later. The answer was to hide oneself as much as possible. This guy is quite handsome though. To call Mok Jae-un's appearance pretty would be an understatement. His beauty was exceptional enough to be described as having outstanding looks. It was even more so up close. Because of that, her interest was slightly piqued, contrary to her original plan. Should I try seducing him? Men were simple and surprisingly vulnerable to a woman's seduction. If she just pretended to show a little interest, they would fall for it on their own. In that sense, if she could make this guy hers, she might be able to use him a bit more without the need to eliminate him. Swish! Soa slightly loosened the collar of her top to reveal her cleavage and stuck close to Mok Jae-un. At this age, men's sexual desire was at its peak. So the effect was definite just by showing her ample cleavage and having their bodies touch. Soa, who had pressed her body against him, whispered, "You know, I like a guy like you." At this, Mok Jae-un glanced at her. Then he smiled and said, "I feel the same way." Heh. As expected. Handsome or not, it didn't matter. If she deliberately seduced them, any man would fall for it like this. Tap. At that moment, Mok Jae-un placed his arm on her shoulder. "Ha. Look at this." Since she seduced him, he was openly showing confidence. If it was like this, she might be able to seduce him faster than expected. If she coaxed him well and used him as her shield until the end and survived, she could adequately. "I've been choosing since earlier." Huh? What is he talking about now? Grip. Mok Jae-un's wrist, which had been wrapping around her shoulder, grasped her neck. Then, crack. In an instant, he twisted her neck. It happened so abruptly that she couldn't even scream or do anything, drawing her last breath and dying on the spot. Everyone was momentarily taken aback. They had just been watching, thinking she would coax Mok Jae-eun. But who would have known such a situation would unfold? A boy shouted, "Why, you crazy bastard, what are you doing?" At the boy's shout, Mok Jae-eun said, the corners of his mouth twitching, "Should I say it's a delightful mealtime?" In front of his eyes, all of them were appetizing prey that would fill him with death energy. The mountain was vast, so shouldn't he start comfortably? Chapter 59. Flags. Part 2. Crack. Thud. The sight of Sowa dying with her neck twisted left the teammates momentarily speechless. Since they had all gathered around her as their center, this death was all the more perplexing. Among them, one boy couldn't hold back and shouted, "Why, you crazy bastard, what are you doing?" No one had anticipated this situation. They had only thought to somehow use him and then discard him, trusting her. They still had stamina left and were watching with their own eyes, yet this happened right in front of them. Mok Jae-eun said, the corners of his mouth twitching, "Should I say it's a delightful mealtime? What nonsense are you spouting?" Another boy seemed to have come to his senses and retorted to Mok Jae-eun's words. Then, signaling to the other boys with his eyes, "Rumble, rumble." The 6 of them surrounded Mok Jae-eun in a circle. Seeing this, Mok Jae-eun slightly tilted his head and opened his mouth. "Unexpected. What? I thought you would be in disarray like bees following a queen bee." At Mok Jae-eun's words, the boys' expressions twisted fiercely. He had described them as fools infatuated with Sowa, the soul girl, and unable to break free, so what fool wouldn't understand that? "You bastard, kill him, don't get riled up," one boy shouted. Then, taking a stance with his fists towards Mok Jae-eun, he said, "Don't get agitated and fall for his scheme. Even if Sowa is dead, the advantage is ours." "You're right. I almost fell for his trick. If they got excited and attacked one by one, they might be picked off instead." The ceiling of internal energy was the same condition, but the fact that he did this meant he had some confidence in dealing with them. "We'll subdue him with a coordinated attack. And let's kill him painfully as the price for killing Sowa." "All right." Mok Jae-eun chuckled. "What a display of friendship. Pack." As soon as he finished speaking, Mok Jae-eun kicked the ground. The dirt rose up to knee height, and Mok Jae-eun's body instantly reached right in front of the boy facing him. "WH what?" The startled boy tried to block Mok Jae-eun with a push kick. However, grip. Rip. Mok Jae-eun snatched the boy's ankle with one hand and pulled it. At that moment, the boy's balance crumbled, and his body was tilted backward. Ugh. He knew Mok Jae-eun was strong, but this was beyond expectations. Mok Jae-eun, who had pulled the boy's ankle, swung the boy's body towards another boy right next to him. Whoosh! Damn it! The surprised boy hurriedly ducked to avoid it. But that wasn't the end. Using the centrifugal force to spin around once, this time he turned downward. Thud. Ack. And smashed the head of the crouching boy with the head of the boy whose ankle he was holding. The two heads collided so hard that the sound of something breaking was heard. It seemed both boys had their skulls shattered. What the hell is this guy? 2 were taken out in an instant. What kind of strength does he have that he's so strong without even using internal energy? A attack simultaneously. As one boy shouted, 2 boys charged at Mok Jae-eun. One aimed a kick at his face, while the other slid on the ground from the opposite side, targeting Mok Jae-eun's ankles. This way, his balance would be broken no matter what. Or so they thought, but... Pack. Whirl, whirl, whirl. Mok Jae-eun instantly kicked the ground and spun his body like a top in midair to avoid it, and then... Swish. Thwack. Arg. He stomped on the crown of the sliding boy's head with the top of his foot. Thud. The boy, who had hit his chin on the ground, rolled his eyes back and lost consciousness. You bastard. Momentarily surprised, the boy who had aimed for his face didn't miss this chance and kicked the left leg Mok Jae-eun was supporting his body with to knock him over. However, thwack! Ack! The boy grabbed his ankle and staggered. He was clearly the one who had kicked, but his ankle hurt as if it would break. What the hell? What are you doing? Taken aback by the sight of the staggering boy, another boy ran towards Mok Jae-eun, intending to smash his head with a sharp rock. But before he could do that, Mok Jae-eun kicked the boy's ankle. Thwack! Ack! The kicked boy's leg shot up, and his body tilted in the opposite direction and fell. Thud! In that instant, Mok Jae-eun stepped on the boy's neck. Crack! The boy, whose neck was twisted, died on the spot. Seeing this, the staggering boy and the only boy who hadn't attacked couldn't hide their bewilderment. For were taken out in an instant. Although their internal energy was sealed, they had also learned martial arts and had a numerical advantage, so they thought they could somehow subdue him. But that expectation was completely off the mark. This guy's pure strength alone was close to the second-rate level. Only then did they feel regret. When Sowa suggested bringing him in, they should have somehow stopped her. They had messed with the wrong person. Aya! At that moment, the only boy who hadn't attacked chose to flee. He had no confidence in dealing with that monster-like guy. If 5 of them had attacked and failed, how could he handle it alone? That bast. The boy with the twisted ankle cursed inwardly at the fleeing boy. But even though he cursed, he understood. Now, running away was the right choice. Swish! At that moment, the boy with the twisted ankle's eyes widened. Gasp! Thud! The ankle of the boy who had been running to escape was pulled back, and he fell. What the hell is going on? While wondering, he saw Mok Jae-eun extending his hand towards the fallen boy and making a pulling gesture. Then, rip! At that moment, the boy's leg, no, his body was being dragged backward. It was an unbelievable sight. As seizing objects in midair? Seizing objects in midair. It is a technique where a profound internal energy master pulls objects or desired things with true energy. Seeing something that only a supreme master at the pinnacle of transcendent realm could do being performed right in front of his eyes, the boy couldn't help but be shocked. No way. What the hell is going on? Not only is he doing this, but his internal energy should definitely be sealed, right? It was a moment of confusion. And no. Skid skid skid. The fallen boy tried to hold on to the ground somehow to resist, but he was dragged, leaving long nail marks. The ankle of that boy was caught by Mok Jae-eun's outstretched hand. Pack. Crack. Aarg. As soon as he grabbed the ankle, Mok Jae-eun twisted it. The boy, whose ankle was bent in the opposite direction, screamed, but Mok Jae-eun stepped on the back of his neck. Crack! The screaming boy's breath was cut off. The face of the boy with the twisted ankle, who had been watching this, turned deathly pale. They had really messed with someone they shouldn't have. The term monster didn't fit him, evil spirit was more appropriate. How could such a guy exist? Even if the seal on his internal energy was released, could he handle this evil spirit who could use seizing objects in midair? Tremble, tremble. His body was shaking violently. He wanted to regain his balance, but his legs went weak, and he fell. Thud. Mok Jae-eun turned his head towards him, smiled, and walked over. Then, bending his knees and lowering his body, he said, What did you say just now? SP spare. Tap. At that moment, Mok Jae-eun grabbed the boy's head. The boy screamed and tried to shake off his hand, but... Crack! Mok Jae-eun twisted the boy's neck. Then, looking into the eyes of the boy who had died with his head twisted, he smirked. It's good that I don't give false hope, right? With those words, Mok Jae-eun, holding the dead boy's head, chanted the oral secrets of the art of binding technique in his mind. It was a delightful mealtime. He had to absorb the death energy when the loss was minimal. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Ta 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 tack. D-damn, he's completely crazy. The running boy. The boy was trembling because of the scene he had just witnessed. He had heard screams while keeping his distance and was startled, so he had approached closer, but he was terrified upon seeing that sight. He hadn't even gotten close to the flag, but Sowa and her teammates had been indiscriminately killed. No, it was almost at the level of a massacre. An evil spirit. An evil spirit. Moreover, was his internal energy really sealed? It seemed like it wasn't. In the end, that looked like seizing objects in midair, pulling with true energy no matter how he looked at it. Does that make sense? A technique that only a profound internal energy master could perform, yet a guy who's not even 17 years old can do it? It was utterly confusing. But even though his mind was in turmoil, one thing was certain. I have to let them know. Whether it was the other guys or the people of the Corpse Blood Valley conducting this gateway, he had to inform them. He's already a dangerous guy, but if he's the only one whose internal energy isn't sealed, it's no different from cheating. Hack. At that moment, as if he had collided with something, the boy's body was thrown backward. Startled, the boy performed a falling technique, turned around, took a stance, and looked ahead with surprised eyes. But he couldn't see anything. What the hell? What did I collide with? Puzzled, he stood up and unconsciously turned his head. At that moment. Gasp! The boy screamed and fell backward. This. The boy doubted his own eyes. In front of his eyes, there was a blurry form of something, and it was a giant monk wearing a skull rosary around his neck. The demonic monk was looking down at him with wide eyes, and it felt like his heart would stop. Chapter 60. Flags. Part 3. Mortal, you're really... Chong Ryong clicked her tongue. She had wondered why he was joining as a teammate when it didn't suit him. But to think he had this kind of plan. Did you intend this from the beginning? How could I miss such a convenient opportunity? Mok Jaeyoung smiled and approached the last remaining person. No, corpse. That corpse was the girl named Sowa, the first one whose neck Mok Jaeyoung had twisted. Mok Jaeyoung placed his hand on the girl's head and chanted the oral secrets of the art of binding technique in his mind, absorbing the remaining death energy. Whoosh! The absorbed death energy spread throughout his body. Directly absorbing it like this allowed him to secure a larger amount compared to when it tried to disperse into the air during the iron ball struggle. However, I should go in order of who died first from now on. Absorbing in the order of who was closest resulted in a significant loss of Sowa's death energy. It hadn't completely disappeared, but it was less compared to the others. Still, not bad. He had already secured a much larger amount of death energy than at Yun Mok Sword Matter. If he could just remove the forbidden gate lock inserted in his chi channels, he could greatly expand his Danjian through chi circulation. Seems like coming here was a good choice. Good choice? Don't tell me. At that moment, the sound of someone's presence was heard from somewhere. Russell. Soon, someone revealed themselves. It was a boy. Seeing the boy approach with familiar eyes, Mok Jaeyoung chuckled and said, "You could have just killed him, but you possessed him? I thought it might be necessary, so I brought him." As soon as he finished speaking, thud. The boy's body collapsed, and the blurry form of the evil spirit appeared. Mok Jaeyoung said with satisfaction, "Thank you very much." He had ordered one thing, but to have his intentions understood like this. He couldn't be anything but an excellent familiar. Mok Jaeyoung approached the fallen boy. After twisting the boy's neck, he absorbed the death energy. It didn't take long. Having finished all this, Mok Jaeyoung stretched his muscles with a refreshed expression. Phew. Feels good. Mortal. What do you intend to do? What do you mean? From the looks of it, you don't seem like you'll be satisfied with just these guys. At Chong Ryong's words, Mok Jaeyoung smiled. Then, looking up at the mountain, he said, I should have a delightful mealtime until dawn. As much as possible. Anyway, according to the passing criteria, as long as he left at most 7 people, that should be enough. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A damp and dark cave at the foot of the mountain. Sizzle. The demon mask walked in with 2 warriors holding torches. As soon as they entered the cave, the expressions of the 2 warriors stiffened. That's because from the moment they entered the cave, a strange energy stimulated their chi sense. It was quite different from human presence or energy. It was unpleasant and gave them goosebumps. It's suffocating. That was the state of mind of the 2 warriors. However, the demon mask entered deeper as if he was used to it. As he did so, a voice came from deep within the cave. Are you the Valley Master of the Corpse Blood Valley? That's right. The fire is bright. At the voice coming from inside, the demon mask signaled the 2 warriors to stop. What? You 2 wait here. But... Wait. Yes, sir. Leaving them behind, the demon mask went deeper into the cave alone. Inside, someone wearing a Taoist robe with yin and yang symbols was standing. As if he had been waiting, he clasped his hands together and bowed his head. You've come? The demon mask asked him. Are the preparations done? Is there even a need to ask? What is it this time? I heard they're quite dangerous compared to last time. At these words, the man in the Taoist robe smiled and replied. Of course they're dangerous if released carelessly. I suppose so. Are they the ones behind the iron bars? That's right. At the answer of the man in the Taoist robe, the demon mask looked back. But a strange sound came from there. Oink oink. It sounded like a pig's cry. There's no way there would actually be pigs, so what could they look like? The demon mask was curious and tried to peek at where the iron bars were. Then the man in the Taoist robe blocked him and said, It's better not to approach too closely. No matter how controlled they are, even those who haven't reached maturity are fierce beasts. Fierce beasts? Beasts beyond beasts, was it? The demon mask looked behind the man in the Taoist robe. There, something dangerous with rat-like eyes was staring intently at him. What did you call that thing? It's a galgio. Brought from the northern sea near Mount Behu. Galgio. Even the name sounded ominous. The demon mask turned around and said, All right. Release them when you see the signal. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Half an hour had passed since the flag defense battle began. The mountain was vast, and perhaps because the flags were meticulously hidden, no one had discovered them yet. But there was someone who found it first. It was the boy from the esoteric realm gate. The boy's name was Yun Wuang, and as soon as he found the flag, he ran towards it with excitement. Found it. If the flag had been a brighter color, it would have been easier to find, but the color was dark, and the location was cunningly concealed in the bushes, making it difficult to find. But there was a reward for searching thoroughly without rest. The pole is quite long. Yun Wuang, who had approached close to the flag, grabbed the pole. It was to pull out the flag and secure a suitable location. However, the flag, which he thought would be easy to pull out, wouldn't budge from the ground. The pole itself wasn't that heavy, so why was that? Puzzled, Yun Wuang soon discovered the reason. What? The bottom of the flag was connected to a large lump of iron. The size was quite big, and even for Yun Wuang, who had trained external techniques and had muscular strength, it felt quite heavy to lift. Holding the pole and moving will be even heavier. In that case, he had to hold the iron lump at the bottom and move. At first, he wondered why they had made the flag this way, but soon he thought it was rather fortunate. If it was this heavy, it would be difficult for other guys to move the flag. Since their internal energy was sealed, this gateway might be easier than expected. He thought that among those who found the flags, there would be some who maliciously tried to eliminate other flags or seize them to reduce the number of people passing. But if the flag was like this, it would be difficult to carry and move, so there would be few who would go to the trouble of seizing someone else's flag. Good. Then I need to gather teammates and defend the location. He just needed to endure until dawn. Meanwhile, on a mountain ridge 200 zhang northwest of where Yan Wuang from the esoteric realm gate was, there was someone who had discovered another flag, albeit later. She was none other than the girl from the Demon Fire Hall. The girl's name was Emo Harang. The joy of finding the flag was short-lived, and she too couldn't hide her perplexity upon seeing the iron lump connected to the bottom of the flagpole. Heavy. The iron lump was extremely heavy for her to lift. It couldn't be helped since her chi channels were blocked, and the martial arts she had learned were based on swiftness, so her muscle mass wasn't thick, making it even more difficult. Moving is impossible. Even if she tried to secure a good location with the flag, she needed teammates. Defending the flag alone was a difficult task. It would be nice if I could break the pole. The flag must be in its complete state. There had been a warning beforehand, so the iron lump was also one with the flag. In the end, the only answer was to wait. However, Emo Harang, who had been fiddling with the upper part of the flagpole by chance, frowned. It was because something was engraved on the upper part of the flag. Without holding a torch and only relying on the moonlight shining through the bushes, it was difficult to see with the naked eye, but rub. When she touched it with her hand, she could roughly tell what was written. Yuan geometry say ji wu yo kaiyan. As she rubbed and deduced what the engraved text said, she could be certain. It was the stance formula of a sword art. And it was a bit different from ordinary sword arts. Could this be? If her guess was correct. Tap. Emo Harang's eyes narrowed. The oral secrets had ended. Up to this point, one might not feel anything particularly strange, but it wasn't the case for her. Incomplete. In her view, the oral secrets were incomplete. If it was the stance formula of a sword art, there was no way it would end here. Most martial arts aim to effectively subdue and kill the opponent, but conversely, they also serve the purpose of protecting oneself. Emo Harang closed her eyes. Swish swish. A sword art was visualized in her mind. It was a bit lacking to be called an advanced sword art, but the sword techniques weren't bad. However, according to these oral secrets, 4 gaps would be created. It meant that there were exactly 4 spots that couldn't be blocked with the available sword techniques. An incomplete sword art. This was strange. If she wanted to overlook it, she could. But they had engraved the oral secrets of a sword art on the flagpole right below the flag, which could be easily passed over without much thought. Moreover, it was an incomplete set of oral secrets. No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't help but be bothered by it if she just passed it by. Then, she suddenly had this thought. Could it be? She hoped it wasn't the case, but she felt she had to check. She boldly decided to give up the flag she had barely found. Still, as if she had some lingering attachment, Emo Harang stared at the flag for a while, then broke the upper part of the pole where the oral secrets were engraved. Snap. If it's not mine anyway. There was no need to let other guys have it. Emo Harang buried the broken upper part of the flag in the ground out of sight and ran. About 2 hours had passed like that. Unlike before, there were people who found flags here and there, and teams were formed. And naturally, as intended in this gateway, there were also confrontations when 2 teams simultaneously discovered one flag. The 2 teams fiercely fought a bloody battle to claim the flag. Their internal energy was absent, so it was almost like a brawl, but in the end, the victor was decided. Huff huff. The winning teammates exhaled rough breaths, covered in blood. They newly realized how difficult it was to fight without internal energy. A boy barely got up and surveyed the surroundings. Out of the 8 teammates, only 5 survived. He had hoped no one would die, but that was just wishful thinking. Fortunately, they had defended the flag, and they just needed to find 3 more teammates. Whether that would be easy, he didn't know. What should we do? We have to defend the flag and wait, right? Of course. We might lose the flag if we wander around. Everyone seemed to agree. But one boy offered a different opinion. Wait a minute. If we just stay here and defend the flag, won't we be at a disadvantage if another intact team appears? That made sense too. It was truly a dilemma. But they couldn't give up the flag they had barely claimed. While they were thinking that, "You found the flag?" Gasp. Everyone's gaze turned to where the voice came from. Seeing someone standing there, they tensed up for a moment but soon felt relieved. It was because they saw only one person standing. Thank goodness. If it had been another intact team, they would have been in trouble. As that one person approached and revealed his face, the expressions of the relieved teammates stiffened. It was none other than Mok Jae-yeon. The guy with the cruel hands, whom they were reluctant to accept as a teammate, had appeared. Stop right there. Don't move. Who are you? A boy stopped Mok Jae-yeon from approaching and asked. Who, you ask? Didn't you join the team with some woman? This boy had seen Mok Jae-yeon join the team with Soa, the Seoul girl. That's why he was asking this. At this, Mok Jae-yeon made a regretful expression and said, "Ah." They were all defeated. Defeated? Yes. Mok Jae-yeon moved his eyes, glanced at the corpses around, and casually said, "Our team also fought another team over the flag, like you guys, and they were all defeated, so I barely escaped." You escaped alone? Yes. With my tired body, I couldn't face 4 of them alone. At Mok Jae-yeon's words, the boys looked at him with suspicious eyes. But it wasn't just suspicion. They had just experienced a similar situation, so they thought it could certainly happen. To them, Mok Jae-yeon spoke in a gentle voice. Since we both lost teammates, I think we fit together, so if it's not a burden, could you accept me? They hesitated at this proposal. The reason they didn't accept him as a teammate in the first place was because he was creepy. That wariness wouldn't easily dissipate. So they whispered cautiously and discussed among themselves. What should we do? That guy is a bit weird. Should we just let him go? But then what about the flag? It's barely been 2 hours. There were still more than 2 hours left until dawn. If other guys attacked during that time, they would inevitably lose the flag. Then they would have to find a flag again, but it would be difficult with just 5 people. Let's accept him. Accept him? Yeah. Anyway, even that guy knows that we have to cooperate to pass this gateway, right? Well, that's true. Because 8 people are needed to pass. No matter how reckless he was, he would still think that they had to join forces and defend this flag to pass this gateway. Considering this, no matter how much of a troublemaker he was, he absolutely couldn't harm them. Having become convinced like this, one of the boys said to Mok Jae-yeon, "All right. But remember, until dawn, we are one. If we betray each other, we're dead. Keep that in mind." At the boy's words, Mok Jae-yeon nodded. But his lips were twitching as if holding back laughter. Ah. This is too good. It felt like they were setting the table for him. Chapter 61. Flags. Part 4. A dead boy's head was grasped by Mok Jae-yeon as he performed the ritual of binding. Not long after, he absorbed all the remaining death chi from the boy. Nice. Mok Jae-yeon smiled. He had absorbed the death chi of a whopping 16 people. Even without sealing his meridians to gather it in his dantian, his entire body's blood vessels were brimming with chi. He seemed to be quite lucky. 11 of them had died fighting each other from the start, and the remaining 5 were considerably fatigued. As a result, he could kill them without exerting much effort. How convenient. Those fools have made a foolish move. Chong Ryong agreed with Mok Jae-yeon's words. Thanks to them sealing everyone's meridians with the Jimunso, it became advantageous for Mok Jae-yeon. If they were in a situation where they could use their internal energy, it would have been difficult to kill the boys in this manner. But thanks to that, he was easily securing Def Chi. Well, if they're going to die competing with each other anyway, it's better for them to become the Def Chi of that guy. After all, she was a vengeful spirit. As such, she didn't particularly feel pity. Besides, in a place where people were killing each other to pass through the barrier, it was meaningless to dwell on such matters. By the way, I suppose that must be the flag. Indeed. Mok Jayangan set down the severed head and approached the flag. Although he had no intention of claiming the flag yet, his gaze was inevitably drawn to it as it was the objective of this barrier. What will you do with the flag? If you're not going to take it now, break it and throw it away. I should. Or it might be more convenient to carry one around in advance for later. That's not a bad idea either. As he said that, Mok Jayangan reached to grab the flagpole but then stared intently at something. Even though his internal energy was sealed, his 5 senses were far more developed than ordinary people. What is it? There's something written right below the flag, near the base of the pole. What does it say? 3-form sword technique, break through the haze with sword light. As Chong Ryan heard the mnemonic Mok Jayangan was reading, she immediately realized what it was. That is a mnemonic for sword technique stances. Sword technique? Hearing it, it does seem that way. Mok Jayangan agreed as it was a mnemonic describing sword stances. But why would such a thing be written here? Read the rest. Unattached thread connects, sword and man as one, spirit moves unhindered. As he continued reading, Mok Jayangan said. That's it. What? That's it? Chong Ryan questioned, and Mok Jayangan asked as if puzzled, is there a problem? The stances seem to be cut off midway. Cut off midway? Yes. If these are the only stances, then the Gokji, Sinju, Gonrian, and Weijing acupoints would have gaps. So it's an incomplete set of stances? It doesn't seem like that's the case. Rather than an advanced sword technique, seeing how it focuses on the fundamentals and the stances don't overlap. Seeing how? It seems like it was created for a sword formation. A sword formation, like arranging swords in a formation? Yes. But with only these stances, the weaknesses are glaringly obvious, so even if you make a sword formation, it would be shoddily put together. Shoddily put together? Huh. What an interesting expression. I didn't say it to be interesting. In any case, there must be a reason for deliberately writing an incomplete sword technique here. Mok Jayangan nodded in agreement with Chong Ryang's opinion. Just as the steel marbles had numbers engraved on them, this was likely a hidden task of the barrier. Mok Jayangan, who had been intently staring at the mnemonic, said, there may be more to these flags than meets the eye. Didn't they say there were 40? That's not what I meant. I'm talking about types. Types? Yes. Could there possibly be other flags with the remaining stances written on them? Oh ho! That's quite a plausible idea. This time, Chong Ryang agreed with Mok Jayangan's words. It was quite likely. If, as you say, the stances hidden on the flags are of 2 types, then those who discover this will inevitably try to find other flags rather than just defending their own. I think the same. 2 types of flags. It didn't end with just finding one flag. In the end, having 8 people stay at the flag location until dawn was just the visible task, and the hidden task seemed to be completing the divided sword stances. Interesting. It was inciting a fight in one way or another. Those who didn't notice this would simply end it like that, but any slightly meticulous fellows would make a move to aim for the other flags. The conclusion was that Mok Jayangan also had to find one flag of the other type. And naturally, 7 teammates had to be with that flag. It's gotten a bit tricky. But now that we know how it works, we'll have to select accordingly. As he said that, Mok Jayangan snapped the flagpole with the mnemonic written on it using one hand. Crack! As Chong Ryan had said earlier, it was to dispose of the flag. But at the moment he broke it. Flinch! Mok Jayangan frowned while looking at the flag. Huh. What's wrong? There was spell power imbued in the flagpole. Spell power? Spell power. It literally refers to the power of spells or techniques. Mok Jiangyun, who had become more sensitive to various types of qi after absorbing death qi with reverse cycling and learning spells, felt it. However, Chong Ryong, who was inside a wooden puppet and unable to sense spell power, asked, "Could it be a trap? It doesn't seem like that. If it were a trap, the spell power would have remained intact." But the fact that the spell power disappeared the moment the flagpole was broken meant that. Pike the eye. Just then, a sound like a horn echoed throughout the entire mountain. Judging from the regularity of the sound, it seemed like a signal. Kukukukuk. Hearing this, Mok Jiangyun lightly crushed the broken flagpole with one hand and muttered, "There must be something else besides this. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Not far away. At a place where a flag was planted on a mountain ridge, another battle for the flag was about to unfold. A group of 8 who had discovered it first was trying to defend the flag, while a group that arrived later was attempting to seize it from them. The group of 8 defending the flag here was none other than those led by a boy named Yom Jie from Vermilion Slaughter Valley. Thwack. Ugh. A boy who was hit by Yom Ga's swift kick was sent flying backward. Damn it. He's too strong. The boy who was knocked back thought in dismay as he recovered. Since internal energy was banned, he thought they could somewhat evenly match those from Vermilion Slaughter Valley. However, their fundamentals were on a different level. It seemed they had diligently trained in external techniques as well, as the power of the kick was no ordinary matter. No wonder they're from Vermilion Slaughter Valley. He started to think they might have picked the wrong opponent. The other guys seemed somewhat manageable, but... Thud. Thud. Ack. Unfortunately, there wasn't much difference. Anyone could see they were being pushed back. They were no match from the beginning. Even Yom Jie from Vermilion Slaughter Valley seemed to realize the difference in skill level as he gestured and taunted. Hey! If you're going to charge in, at least show some persistence. Damn it! They were angry but couldn't do anything about it. Crack. Kook. No. One of the boys had his neck broken by a boy from Yom Ga's group and was defeated. Not much time had passed since they charged in, but 2 had already lost their lives. If they suffered any more losses, their group would be annihilated. The leader of the boys, judging that it was hopeless, shouted, "Retreat!" At the leader's cry, the other boys who had been desperately trying to seize the flag seemed to agree as they fled without looking back. Yom Jie from Vermilion Slaughter Valley smiled bitterly and muttered, "Who says you can leave?" Charging in was up to them, but did he seem like someone who would let them go easily? He had to kill them all and make an example out of them so that other guys wouldn't thoughtlessly aim for their flag. Capture them all, thwack. Ack. Just then, Yom Jie from Vermilion Slaughter Valley shut his mouth. What was that just now? A boy who was attempting to flee the fastest towards the opposite bushes suddenly disappeared with a scream as a dark shadow swept by. A momentary silence fell. From the boys who were trying to pursue with rising killing intent to the boys who were trying to escape, they all looked at where the shadow had passed with startled eyes. Crunch! Crunch! The bushes rustled and sounds of something being chewed could be heard. That sound was horrifyingly ominous. What? What was that just now? The boys unknowingly took steps back at the unpleasant noise. Then, a sound came from the rustling bushes. Oink oink. What was that? At first listen, it sounded like a pig's squeal. However, the bizarre glint faintly visible between the bushes was enough to make one shudder. The fleeing boys were taking steps back when the bushes shook. And then, something revealed itself from there. The expressions of the boys who saw it all stiffened identically. Thud. What extended hook-shaped front legs was not human. It resembled a wolf, but was also different. It seemed to be about twice the size of an ordinary wolf, with red fur on its head and rat-like, completely black eyes. What is this? A wolf? There are wolves like this? It's too big. Oink oink. The monstrous beast making pig noises opened its mouth, revealing razor-sharp teeth filling its entire maw. Gulp. A boy who swallowed dryly out of tension shouted, "Run away." The moment that cry ended, the boys turned their bodies to the right. Then, pounce. The red-headed wolf beast instantly caught up to the boy at the very rear and chomp. Aya. It bit into his calf. Then, with tremendous jaw strength, it thrashed the boy around. Thud. Thud. Ugh. It only thrashed him around a couple times, but the boy had already lost consciousness, either dead or passed out. His calf, nearly severed by the sharp teeth, was tattered. The wolf-like beast approached the boy's head and swallowed it whole. Crunch. Crunch. At that sight, the boys defending the flag turned deathly pale. Right before their eyes, a beast was chewing on a person's head, so it would be stranger not to feel fear. This was the same for Yom-Ga from Vermilion Slaughter Valley. Damn it. What rotten luck to have such a bizarre creature appear when internal energy was sealed. It didn't seem to be an ordinary monstrous beast. Even against regular wolves, it would be difficult to face them barehanded when unable to use internal energy. Let alone a beast of that size. It went beyond difficult. They might have to risk their lives. Should we flee? It no longer seemed like a situation where they could defend the flag. But it was also absurd to give up on the flag they had finally obtained because of that damn beast. Right then, oink oink. The beast that had crushed and swallowed the boys had now looked in their direction. Then, as if it had chosen a target, it scraped its hind legs on the ground and tried to launch its body forward. At this, Yom-Ga from Vermilion Slaughter Valley tried to shout, "Run!" Pounce. Squeal. The moment the charging beast had only taken about 5 steps, it suddenly saw something and screamed, frantically stepping back. Then, snorting and exhaling through its nose, it changed direction. Swish. That direction was where the group of boys who had tried to seize their flag and ran away were. A boy who was fleeing in a panic while screaming said, "WH what? Why is it suddenly acting like that?" At this, Yom-Ga from Vermilion Slaughter Valley irritably muttered, "Damn it. How the hell should I know?" He also couldn't understand why the beast suddenly behaved that way. It looked like it was startled after seeing something. So he turned his head to look in the direction the beast had been looking, and that was the flag? Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Huff. Huff. 3 boys were running like crazy. They weren't headed in a specific direction but just dashing towards whatever they could see. The terrified boys felt like their hearts would burst. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. While fleeing, another one of them was caught. Since internal energy was sealed and they couldn't use lightness skills, their running speed was only slightly faster than ordinary adult men. But that monstrous beast was different. It seemed to be even faster than a galloping horse. At this rate, will we all die? As this was happening, the running boy's eyes caught sight of a figure standing on the opposite side. He was momentarily startled and about to change direction, but realizing it was a person, he inwardly felt relieved. What? Who is that? And then, upon seeing him, he recognized him at a glance. It was that guy who had passed through first with a brutal hand during the steel marble competition. In a different situation, he would have ignored or avoided him, finding him unpleasant, but the boy shouted with a glimmer of hope. Hey! Help us! Surely, that guy had also formed a group. If they all helped, maybe they could somehow face this monstrous beast. But what was with that guy's clothes, and why was there so much blood on his hands? Flinch! Moreover, looking at them running over, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile reaching his ears.